Good morning. It's Wednesday, the 5th of June, and we are going to look at Venus in some detail today. It's, I think, important to understand the movements that this planet makes, which no other planet does. Well, actually, that's not true. Mercury does, but in a kind of different way. But I think it's very interesting to see what the planet does, look at the mythology around that, and what ancient cultures believed about Venus's meaning as a result of these movements. You'll see as we go along. Right, the first thing I want to do is share so that you can look at today's chart. And we've been following Venus quite closely, and here we have still Venus behind the sun. So Venus is at 15:24 minutes of arc, and the sun is at 15:12 minutes of arc. This is an interesting feature. It takes about 40 days for Venus to complete this transit across the back of the sun where we cannot see her or him. Venus can be masculine or feminine. Let's call her for convenience. Now, because what happens is as the planet gets towards the sun, it disappears into the sun's light, the same as the moon does. So it disappears from view. And as I say, it takes about 40 days to go around the back of the sun. There is also a time when Venus comes around the front of the sun, and it takes a lot less time, but we're not in that period. So let's just look at this and what it means. When Venus was over here, approaching the sun, as the sun rose, so if you can imagine this lot rising up, because Venus was over here, Venus rose before the sun and was called the morning star. Now, you'll know the morning star if you've ever been up and looked in the sky and seen this really bright light, very peaceful and silent. It's just hanging there. It looks great. When Venus emerges from around the back of the sun, Venus will be on this side. So as the sun rises and then goes across the sky and sets, Venus will be the evening star because Venus is now behind the sun. Now, the two different images, if you like, of Venus are as the morning star rising before the sun, and then the evening star setting after the sun or remaining in the sky when the sun has gone down. Now, there is quite a lot of mythology around this. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm just going to stop sharing for a moment so that I can talk about it. Because many cultures over the years, and the thousands of years actually, that we know of, so in history, going back 6,000 years, 7,000 years, even more probably, cultures who were very clever at recording the heavens, getting into high places, noting when planets went below the horizon or set, when they rose, and wanting to know all about eclipses and the position of planets so that they could predict and do the right thing at a time that was auspicious. Okay. So when Venus is the morning star, she was seen as being masculine, in her masculine guise. And she was called the Lady of War. This is around Mesopotamia and around Turkey, current Turkey, and the Near East, so the east of the Mediterranean. So yeah, the eastern side of the Mediterranean and the Near East to Europe. So she was the Lady of War, and she was considered to represent light, and war and action and judgment. Now, this is because she rose before the sun. She was the morning star. And so therefore, she clearly had dominance over the sun. Then when she did what she's doing now and goes behind the sun and then emerges 40 days later, lost in the wilderness for 40 days, ring a bell. There are some Christian mythologies around that. So she emerges as the evening sun, where she is given a feminine nature, and she was known as the Lady of Love. And she then represents attraction and fertility, death, old age, the underworld. So we've got these two faces or two sides of Venus, and they are very much in evidence in mythology. And this is worldwide. We've got records of how she was viewed by African cultures, indigenous American cultures of Northern and Southern Hemisphere, and Eastern cultures around China, for instance, and then Russia, India, all over, right? And actually a guy put together a study about this in this book, The Songs from the Sky, which is published by the Center of Archaeoastronomy. And he did a study of Venus in here, which actually looks at all the different cultures and makes note of how Venus was viewed in the East and the West. It's called Venus in the East and West by Stanislaw Iwanis Chevsky. I tell you what I'm going to do. I am just going to show you that so that you can see it. I'm sorry I've got your name wrong, Mr. Stanislaw. I really am. I can't pronounce that. I'm dyslexic anyway. My big apologies. Anyway, a nice article. You can view it online if you are into the academic sites. But anyway, so that's where I've got this from. And so in this article, my man Stan talks about Venus also as the Queen of the Heavens. And for 2,000 years, something like that, certainly for 1,000 years, but there's evidence of it either side. Venus was given epithets like the Queen of the Heavens. And it morphed into the Christian idea of the Virgin Mary, who took a lot of the epithets that Venus had as the Queen of the Heavens. And eventually, I think in the 7th century, you actually get Venus being called the Queen of the Heavens. Sorry, you actually get, the Virgin Mary being called the Queen of the Heavens. So taking the names that previously had been given to Venus as Queen of the Heavens, Mother of God, etc. So a lot of comparisons can be made between Christian mythology and the mythology which precedes it, and rightly so. It's all coming from the sky, but anyway, I'll leave that to be argued by the various religious theorists. But going back to the planet, which is my concern, because Venus does this morning star and evening star thing and looks so striking when you see her, she carries a lot of weight. It's also the third brightest object in the sky. So you've got the sun, the moon, and then Venus. And the Sumerians in particular saw that as a triad. I think actually quite a few of the ancient cultures did. They had a triad. And it gave a duality, so a masculinity and a femininity, as in yang and yin, to Venus. And sometimes, I mean, the sun and the moon were also awarded masculinity, a masculine and feminine. However, that could be swapped because the sun could be seen as masculine and the moon could be seen as masculine, and then the sun could be seen as feminine, and the moon could be seen as feminine by different cultures. But what we're left with is that there is a duality, and that's always what we're left with. And that was what the Egyptians were so keen to point out. There is this duality. And duality means, obviously, there being two realities or two evident, I'm trying to think of the word, two evident images, if you like, from the same image. I've not used the right words there. I can't remember the word I want to use. But anyway, so as we can see, the planet Venus is far more complex than the Barbie doll. And when we diminish Venus and call her the goddess of love, I shrink really inside. I go, oh no, no, because the complexity of this planet for what we're wanting to do here, and that is understand psychological astrology. The complexity of this planet in psychological astrology is vast and immense, and I don't really think that we've got to the bottom of it yet. I think, you know, there's further to go. And I think we're getting a better understanding of the dual sexuality, the dual gender, etc., by the kids that were born around the late 80s, early 90s. And I think they've done a lot to help us understand that gender has been tightly boxed in with male and female and masculine and feminine, and that's not how deity is. There's a bigger blurring of gender boundaries in our deities than we had arrived at over recent decades in terms of this very straight boundary between masculine and feminine. It's not so when we get to the cosmos. It's much more blurred, and that's the reality of it. That's the way it should be. So we have those indigo kids, as they were called in the UK. They're the indigo generation. To thank us. We've got them to thank for opening our eyes and our minds to the broader concepts of masculine, feminine, male, female, etc., which the gods have always had. Yes, Venus can be masculine, can be feminine. And when we say that, we need to be looking at the yang and yin, which really doesn't refer to the gender that you're born with. It's how your behavior is, how your personality is. So I am a masculine type female. Others can be a feminine type female. A guy can have masculine behavior or feminine behavior. It's all sort of merged really, and it should be led by whether or not something is outgoing, moving outwards, pushing forwards in straight lines, which is yang masculine, or whether something pulls in like gravity, is reticent, pulls in, is more reflective, and moves in curves, not straight lines. I mean, those are the two two duality, the two of the duality that I use in psychological astrology. You'd think actually that with the moon and the sun being in Gemini at the moment, you'd think I'd be a lot more articulate than I'm managing to be on this video. I'm not going to start it again. We'll just go with what we've got. Let's just do the share again so that we can have a look at the chart again. Okay. Now, so on this chart, the moon has moved into Gemini and is approaching the sun for the Gemini new moon. First of all, it has to go past Jupiter and Mercury. And Gemini. I did some work with you on Gemini a few days ago, talking about the Gemini energy. I want to look at a few more things to do with Gemini as well. I don't just want to do sort of like the light bright stuff. I also want to cover the stuff that other people don't mention. And I think it ought to be said, quite rightly, that Gemini is also the sign that covers thievery, so theft. It's also the sign that covers deceitfulness. Mercury, the ruler, was a slippery character in mythology, who couldn't fight and protect himself because it was a bit, like, I don't fight. So what he would be able to do would be to talk himself out of anything and everything. And so we have to remember that in Gemini, there is the energy exists in Gemini, which can be quite deceitful. And a lot, I think probably a lot of thieves have a high amount of Gemini because they're kind of slippery, and think they can get away with it. I understand that when somebody examined the prison population once, they found a high degree of Gemini present, and I remember at the time I thought, yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all. All these things have to be hidden somewhere in the zodiac signs, the things that we like to give great accolade to, and also the things that we don't want to admit exist in human nature. Well, this exists in human nature, and Gemini hides it. So I just wanted to explain that about Gemini, because we're in this, huge Gemini time. Do take time occasionally to think, as I often do, I wonder what a baby born today would be like. So a baby born today would have Venus and the Sun and Mercury and Jupiter and the Moon all in Gemini. Think how that might, how the baby might express that, what the baby has in its tool bag when it gets born. Right, here's your chart. This is your blueprint. Your horoscope is your blueprint that you're going to take through life. This is what you've got. These are the tools in your tool bag, if you like. Work with this. That's an awful lot of Gemini. And we've got some bits and pieces of other things as well, but I just think that's quite interesting. And so I think, yeah, the person born today is going to be good at literary stuff, and possibly a writer, and also quite capable of petty theft, apparently. But anyway, right, I better stop there, hadn't I, before I talk myself into a big deep hole. It was lovely to talk to you, and I'll be back tomorrow. And let's get rid of this share one. Hey, hello. So yeah, I'll be back tomorrow, and it was great to talk to you. And have a lovely day, and I'll see you in the morning tomorrow. Well, it won't be I post these things by the time they get published. It's like, how long does it take? Anyway, okay, thanks. I'm going to see you soon. Bye.